Good morning and welcome to this webinar. This is Asset Panda Pro Tip Series, our new calendar reveal. I am super excited to bring this to you today to talk through it, to kind of deep dive into the how-tos of how to use this new feature. And we're really excited to bring this to you. We'll see a lot of potential benefit for our clients in using this new calendar view, and our team's worked really hard to bring you this awesome new feature. So I know we've had the calendar. This is a much more enhanced and upgraded version of that. And so before we dive too far in, I do want to do just some general housekeeping like I usually do. So if you're new to our webinars, make sure to look on your webinar control panel there, and there are some different cards and information on your screen. So the first one is the slide deck, of course, so you'll get some important information there. In addition, there is the multimedia player. The majority of this webinar is going to be actually demoing and going into the product, so make sure that that's handy and available to you, that the volume is cranked up to 11. Hopefully I'm not too loud, and that you're able to follow along, because that is going to be definitely where the heavy lifting of this presentation is going to happen. You'll also have a Q&A box there. We definitely want to hear from you. This is something new that's coming out. We want to hear your feedback. We want to hear all of your questions. So please feel free to ask those. We'll try to answer those during the presentation, but we'll also have a dedicated Q&A time after we run through the product and the enhancements themselves. So please be sure to have that Q&A box handy. You'll also see a resources tab here. We always want to give you great reference points. And so there's a few awesome references there, and resources there rather. So one of those is case studies. Go to our website, check out how other people are using Asset Panda. There's a ton of wonderful information there for you. One is our Bamboo Facebook crew, and it's a super fun place to collaborate, where we're posting updates about the product and things that are coming out, and just general collaboration with our users. It's also a great place for you to connect with other Asset Panda users, talk about use cases, and get additional help should you need that. So please check that out if you're not already there. Go ahead and navigate there. We'll let you in, and we'd love to talk to you there too. So there's also a few great ebooks here. These are probably one of our most downloaded resources. Our marketing team's done a fantastic job putting together some of this information. So if you haven't checked those out already, please do. They're also available on our website in addition to this resources tab. And then, of course, there's some survey questions. You know, we've got to get some takeaways from events like these. So please be sure to fill out that survey. Some of it won't be relevant until the end of the presentation. That box will be there until the close of the presentation. So please be sure to check that out too. All right, I feel like we are ready to dive right in here. So takeaways for the presentation today. One of the first things that we want to make sure of is that you walk away with an understanding of the new feature, right? How to use it, how to configure it, and that you see it as a benefit that you're going to start using relatively soon. And then, of course, I kind of just led into this, but be ready to walk away knowing how to configure the calendar. So not only do you understand it, know how to navigate it, but you can actually put it to work for yourself. And then, of course, speak up. That Q&A session is really important. Get your questions answered, and allow us to get a little bit of insight as to some of the questions that you have, so we can make sure that we're communicating out properly. Awesome. So an agenda, the first thing that we'll go through is general navigation and access. How do we make sure that users have this turned on? How do we navigate it and just kind of get used to the feel and the flow? Then we'll actually go through adding some of those calendar views to the system to make sure that you can see specifically what you're looking for. And one of the big pieces is going to be navigating the Gantt chart. Some of these may flow in and out of order as we go through the actual product demonstration, but we definitely will be covering these three topics of conversation, some helpful hints, tips, and tricks. Awesome. So I think we're pretty much ready to dive right in. Again, make sure that multimedia player is handy and your Q&A box, and we'll get started. Okay, so I am ready to dive in. A few things to note and some takeaways and
some information I want to make sure that we're all aware of before we start navigating and configuring here. So the new calendar is designed to allow each user to create their own calendar views. And the reason for doing this is because we know that different roles and responsibilities have different needs and desires out of the software, right? So if I'm doing scheduled maintenance, and that's my particular job function, then I probably want to come in and see a scheduled maintenance calendar, but I don't want to sift through all these other calendar views or assets or different objects on the calendar in order to get to the data that I need. So we've made this very, very specific and very user-friendly to the end user to ensure that they have quick access to see exactly what they need here. So these views are going to be configured by the end user. Okay, so will this replace my current calendar? If you are in the new UI, when we roll the new calendar live, you will be loaded into this new calendar view. If you're still in the old UI, in the classic UI, then once you migrate over to the new UI, you'd have these new calendar feature and enhancements available to you at that time. Okay, so just some quick tips and information there. So let's go ahead and just go through in general the navigation here. So I've just gone really quickly to my calendar tab here at the top, and it's loaded this calendar view for me. I have a standard month view. I have a standard week view, and then I have a standard day view. This is particularly helpful if you're doing hourly checkouts and things like that, right? So you could see those at first glance here on this calendar. In addition, I have a new and improved Gantt chart. This one's huge. It's definitely a huge improvement from the one that we had previously in the previous calendar. It gives you a lot more visibility, and you can see things sequentially in that line, like we want to see the progression of maybe a checkout, a repair, a warranty expiration date, and you'll see those all line up against this calendar in a nice row. So we'll get to this in just a moment, but what I want to take you through initially is just creating a calendar view in general. So the calendar views, the overarching calendar views, correspond back to the groups of data that you have in the system. So, and for this example, we're going to keep it simple. We're going to create a calendar group based on our assets group, or a calendar view rather, based on our assets group. So I'm just simply going to hit this plus button, and I'm going to add a calendar, a group view. So if I click add group, I'm going to choose my group. I'll choose assets in this case. You also have the ability to choose other groups that you have calendar turned on for. So let's say that I'm tracking employee shifts to a particular job site, and I want to see that on the calendar. I know we have a lot of clients who are maintaining and managing job sites and equipment, and capacity planning is really, really important in that regard. Being able to see which employees are scheduled to which jobs and when those end helps us forecast out future work. So that's another great use case here. But in this case, I'm going to go ahead and again choose my assets group. The view color, this is across the calendar for your assets. What color do you want these to show up in? I like this pretty pink coral color, so we'll go with that. And then, of course, which dates on my asset record do I want to display on my calendar? Now, remember, this is an overarching calendar for all of your assets. So you might include things like a warranty expiration date, a scheduled maintenance date. Now, these are fields on your record from the group. You also have those action dates. So for the actions that I have on my asset, which dates do I want to show up on the calendar as well? Yes, I do have an action called peanut butter and jelly, and for this case, we're going to use the checkout action instead. It does have a start and end date, and it is a date-driven action, which means I can go ahead and see the start and end date on my calendar. So I'll select checkout, and let's go ahead and just create this view. So when we create that, if we go to our standard month calendar, and well, of course, let's select our view here. We should start seeing data populate based on dates that I already have on assets in my system here. So it looks like I have a warranty expiration date that's actually past due on the 1st of January. I have an asset that's checked out from today through the 30th. And I have scheduled maintenance coming due on asset number 999. today, as a matter of fact. So if I were to hop over to the day view, I would see those two entries that happened today. So one of them is an ongoing checkout, and then the scheduled maintenance date. If I had a date time field, I would be able to see this entry at whatever particular time it falls today. But because this is just a date field on my record, it's simply going to show me that this happens today, right? If we look at it on the week view, our checkout again is ongoing, and it's going to give us this continuous bar that runs through this week and into next. And again, just that entry for scheduled maintenance. If I look on the Gantt view, and so here's this awesome slider where I can adjust and zoom out or zoom in as it's relevant. And of course, I can continue to scroll back in days and forward in days here. But then this is just a list of all of my assets here on the left-hand side, right? So these are all the assets in the system. And I can use these handy filters here to start whittling that down. So let's just say I want to see only assets where the location is Frisco, right? I would select that value, and when I return to my calendar, it's going to whittle down that list for me. So even if you don't have a quick sub view, which we'll talk about here in just a moment, there's a really quick and easy way to whittle down that list to find only what you're looking for. I'm going to go ahead and remove that filter for now. While we're here, there's also this handy slider here, which gives you a few options to group this data by a particular attribute. So instead of maybe filtering my list down, I want to see it in a different way. So let's say I want to see assets by location. If I were to do that, it should roll up all of my assets and kind of break those down by individual location here on the calendar. Awesome. And of course, you have this handy dandy search feature, which if you knew exactly what you were looking for, you could just specifically type that in, and it should return only the matching result. Okay, let's take a quick peek at what information is hosted here in our calendar entries. So if I were to just quickly click on one of these, it's going to give me the basic information about that event. So remember, this was a checkout action that I had performed on my asset record. So here I have the start date of that checkout and the end date, maybe my expected return date here. So it's important that if you want to see a full checkout on the calendar, that we create a date-driven action that enforces entering the end date if it's a temporary checkout, that enforces kind of that expected return date, that end date of the checkout action. And because I have both dates that are required in my checkout action, I can see both of those dates here on the calendar, the full gamut of that particular checkout action. And then of course, who logged the action and the date and time and who it's checked out to. Maybe I captured a signature. You might see that signature file here. But again, it's going to give me the information related to the checkout action that I performed. Whereas the scheduled maintenance entry here is simply going to give me the date field from my asset record, right? I know that this is a scheduled maintenance date because that's the field that it corresponds to on my assets record, right? So asset record 999 has a scheduled maintenance date field on the asset, and then the value is the 20th at 12 a.m. Similarly, if you go to the warranty expiration date, the exact same thing conceptually, just different information. So again, asset number 123. This is my primary display field on my asset record, by the way. So if my primary display field on my record was the asset description, that's what I would see here instead, right? So this is my identifiable data point that I know which asset I'm looking at. So again, asset number 123, my assets group has a warranty expiration date field on the record. And of course, the value that's stored for this particular asset is that the warranty expires on the 1st of January. So that's what I'm seeing here on my calendar view. Okay, so the super important next piece of this are the subviews or filtered views in Asset Panda. So we know we have a standard calendar view here for our assets group. let's say I work in a particular location and I only want to see assets by a particular location for this example. I can quickly, as a user, hop in and create a subview that's just a quick and easy access for me to see specifically what I need to see. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and create a subview by adding, or by hitting this plus button here. And we're going to go ahead and click on Add Filtered View. We'll give it a name. So let's call this, we'll use Fort Worth as our example, Fort Worth Assets. Okay, now once again, we're going to choose the group that the subview is for. Because we only have a calendar object created for our assets group, that is the group that we're going to be able to see here. Again, going back to that employees example, for instance, if we had a calendar view, an overarching calendar view created for our employee group, then we would be able to create a subgroup underneath that one. So again, for this example, we'll choose assets. We can choose our view color. It's just going to show up here on the left-hand side as a dot. And then let's add that filter in. So for this particular example, maybe I want to see only Fort Worth assets. So I'm going to select a location, and I'm going to choose Fort Worth, and then I'm going to go ahead and create, right? So if I go and I check my Fort Worth assets sub view here, it's a mouthful of information to say. if I select just that filtered view, I can see only the assets that are in Fort Worth. And then again, of course, let's say I only want to see, maybe in particular, my scheduled maintenance date. So I filter down that way and I can see just the scheduled maintenance for my Fort Worth assets. I know a lot of us want to see calendar views by categories as well. So similarly, you could go in and create an additional view. Maybe this one, I don't have my categories field pulled into my asset records, but maybe this is how you would go in and add that in particular, your categories view. Maybe you only want to see laptops. And actually, for the sake of this demonstration, let's go ahead and pull our categories field into our assets group. This will be a great refresher for some of you for on the configuration side. Okay, of course, if we get logged out, let's hop back into my test account here. Sorry about that. This is a real-time demo. So, okay, so again, now we're back here in the configuration of my Asset Panda account. I do have a categories group. So let's go ahead and click edit on our assets group, and we're going to pull in our categories field into our assets. So I'm simply going to add a new field here. I'm going to call it asset type. And I'm going to choose a group list field because remember our categories group is just a list pulling from another group of data in the software. So I'm going to grab categories and let's save and close that field. Now that we've added categories to our assets group, and let's go into our assets and make sure that they're categorized properly. So now that I have that field, I can populate some of that data, right? So for example, this is clearly a laptop. It's a MacBook Pro. So let's go into that asset and we can update the category field on the record. And again, we call that asset type. So here's our field. If we edit that, we're able to choose laptop as our asset type, and that gives us a great example for our calendar. So now if I navigate back to the calendar, great, I'm going to add another subview. So I'm going to click my plus button, I'm going to add that filtered view, and I'm going to call it laptops. Again, I'm going to choose my assets group. I'm going to add a new filter to say where the asset type, and remember previously we didn't have asset type here, but now that we tied our category field into our assets group, or created a category field pulling from our categories group into our assets, we now have the ability to use that as a filter. So again, I'm going to choose laptop here as my filter view, and I'm going to go ahead and create that. I'm going to go ahead and choose laptops. And maybe in this particular instance, I only want to see the warranty expiration date. So I'll remove my action fields and my other group field, which was the scheduled maintenance, right? Maybe I don't do scheduled maintenance on laptops. Maybe I just have a refresh cycle, which is another great example of something you could use the calendar for, those refresh dates. Maybe end-of-life dates, refresh dates, things like that are super important to see on the calendar for you. So especially for IT equipment. So in this case, I see only my laptops and the warranty expiration date for those particular devices. If I wanted to see multiple views, I could certainly do that. But again, I'm only going to see what applies by my date filters here. So what you're going to see on your calendar is a combination of what you choose plus the dates, right? So if I don't have any Fort Worth assets that match warranty expiration date, I'm only going to see the objects that meet that criteria, right? So I'm looking for dates first and then filtering by my view. And of course, I can just go back and see all of the date fields for my assets group in general. So just some quick navigation here and some quick and easy options to show us which dates we wanted to see. And again, if we want to edit that or modify that, we can certainly just click on the pencil icon next to your overarching group and say, maybe I also want to see other date fields from a particular action or other fields from the group itself.
Okay, so that was a lot of information we just took in. I hope that that was helpful, that you have a good general idea here and you can start tinkering with that whenever it comes out and make sure that it's useful to you and your team. Let's go ahead and dive right into our Q&A session here. We'll get some questions and answers. If for whatever reason we don't make it to some of the questions, we have a really big audience today, which we totally appreciate, but if we can't make it to some of those questions, our support team and our product team are taking that information back, and we'll make sure to reach out with those answers. But let's try and see how many of those we can get through. All right, so we are live on Q&A now, and we've had a lot of great questions and conversations going on in the Q&A chat throughout the webinar here. Sounds like a few people might have had some audio issues. I do want to let you know that this is recorded. You can watch it after the fact as well. If you were one of those people, we'll make sure that you've got all of the information that you need. So first question, I think this is a really important one. Can you create views as an admin that others can see? So in this particular calendar version, the end users are the ones creating their own views. So even as an admin, you can create your own views, but they won't be set up or structured for your end users. So they would need to go in and create those calendar views. Awesome. The next question is, so the Gantt view. Can the Gantt view of the calendar, is it only available on the new version of the system? So in the old UI, it is on a setting under company settings about what's your default calendar view. You can have a standard default calendar view, and then you can also change it to a Gantt. This version of the calendar is available only in the new UI as we're transitioning all of our functionality to the new interface. So if you want to use this calendar that's coming out, you will need to do that in the new UI. You do have that Gantt view in the old one. It's just not quite as enhanced as this one, and I think for the best experience, we would hope that you would make that transition and actually view it in the new UI. All right, another question. My calendar is not displaying like yours. I'm using the new UI but cannot get Gantt view to work, nor do I get the options for editing calendars on my calendar page. Great pickup. Maybe this is something I should have absolutely included a little bit earlier in the conversation. This is going to be released at the end of this month. So what we wanted to do is make sure that we are preparing all of our users and our clients for what is to come, that you get these full walkthroughs. Again, this is going to be recorded and available to you so you can continue to walk through the features and just ensure that you have the ability to train your users up on how to use that, create any internal documentation that you see necessary for your group. There will also be documentation as far as knowledge-based documentation, videos. This webinar will all be in the support portal. If you haven't checked out the support portal, It's a great place for you to go into the Asset Panda community and get more information about some of these things. Like I mentioned, the webinars can be available as well. So this is coming out at the end of this month. And be on the lookout for some emails from our marketing team and some in-app changes that will indicate that this is available to you. All right. Someone says, I'm new to AP. When will the tutorial videos be updated to reflect the new UI? So thanks for that. And welcome. We're glad that you're part of Asset Panda. There is a main video that is updated. We are still working on some of the videos in the knowledge base to be updated as well. So we'll definitely reach out to you and make sure that you've got the information that you need. But please be sure to look on the knowledge base. And like I said, we're working diligently to update every single one of our articles and videos in that space. But we'll definitely reach out to you and see specifically what you're looking for and make sure that it's available to you. All right. Another question. Can I see assets that are checked out or reserved for other users? Absolutely. So if you have the ability to view those assets, right, so you have access to see assets regardless of who they're assigned to and that kind of thing, you will definitely be able to see the checkout and reservation information in the calendar. I think the Gantt chart's a great view for this. And even like the day view where you'll be able to see checkouts, if you're high volume and you're doing this on you've got something checked out that's moving quickly from hour to hour, that day view is a great place to see that, and you'll definitely be able to see the other checkout actions and reservations for those users. This is a great segue into me letting you know that there is some really awesome reservation enhancements and improvements coming to the system too, very, very, very soon. So we'll do another one of these with regard to some new releases that we have coming out regarding reservations as well. Awesome. Okay. Are we able to interact with assets or actions through the calendar, or is it strictly informational? For example, if I go to a specific checkout in the calendar and be able to check the item back in. Wonderful question. So right now, this is static information. You're looking more so for like availability and seeing maybe scheduled maintenance dates like we talked about, that kind of thing. With some upcoming features and upcoming enhancements, specifically around reservations, you will be able to interact in a certain capacity with those assets, specifically things like checkout, check-in. So wonderful question, and that is definitely coming down the pike relatively quickly. Someone says, sorry if I missed this, when will the new software be live? Not a bad question, and for everyone's sake, if anybody else missed that too, it is going to be live coming at the end of this month. This new calendar will be coming at the end of the month. All right. Can we do reservations and checkouts for assets? Also, can you reserve multiple assets on one reservation? Another great question. And I'm really excited to be getting a lot of these reservation questions. I think that what we've got coming is going to be something that's super helpful and that a lot of people seem to be interested in. So that's great news. Our team will be excited to hear that. And absolutely. So in the future, you will be able to use some reservation functionality, and that is integrated into the calendar, right, to perform reservations and checkouts from the calendar. And in a reservation, you will be able to reserve multiple assets on one reservation. More to come on that too. So hang out and stay tuned. That's definitely coming in our reservation update. Is there a way to produce a report based on the information in the calendar? Great question, absolutely. And the reason why you absolutely can do this is because the data that is coming, that's being rendered onto the calendar and being displayed there is coming from the record. So these dates are either stored in a field on the record, right? So let's take our assets, for example. If I have an asset that I'm displaying back to me on the calendar based on a scheduled maintenance date, for example, that date is stored on the calendar itself. I'm sorry, on the record itself, which means that it's reportable. I know we also demonstrated the checkout feature on the calendar as well. That data is typically stored in an action. So if it is stored as part of the record in any form or fashion, it is definitely a reportable data point. So if you were to go into reports and generate a report, you would be able to say, show me all of the assets that have a scheduled maintenance date between the state and the state, and it would mirror, as long as your filters are set up properly and your calendar view is set up properly on the calendar, it should be the same data from your report to your calendar. Great question. How do we know if we are on the new UI platform? So if you experience the change, I know you saw the interface in today's presentation, that is definitely the new UI. The one definite way to know, there are a few indicators in the system. The first and foremost is if you have a gear, if you're an admin, you have a gear icon on the top right-hand side of your screen, you're definitely in the new UI. If you have a little person icon in the top right-hand side of your screen that indicates who you are and kind of takes you to your own personal settings, you're definitely in the new UI. If you want to confirm this, you can go into, under the gear icon, go to company settings, and in that screen, there's a toggle that allows you to swap back and forth between the new and the old until we eventually sunset the old UI. And if you do that and you switch back real quick, you'll definitely know which you're on. The older UI has a lot more just buttons on the top of the screen. It's also a different color. It's not that navy color. You'll see a lighter blue, and definitely some changes to the listing screen at first glance. So that's one way for sure to tell. We can also, as a takeaway from this Q&A, take a peek at your account and just make sure to update you on that. All right. How do I create fields under a category? Great question. So if you are an admin, you can go into the group settings of your account and look at your categories group, not your assets group, but your categories group. And under that categories group, if you click on edit, you'll be able to add fields to your categories group. A lot of people like to just put notes in there, description, details, and you can add unlimited fields and different information that you're collecting there. And then whenever you go and save that and you go to your categories group, go to the sub-navigation, the top header, where you actually click on it to get to the records, and you open one of those records that are there or create a new record, you should see the new fields that you created on the category. For best practice and you know, just tips and tricks, make sure that your category group is a field on your asset record. It's super handy, super helpful. There's a lot of functionality that can spin off of that. So awesome. Can you receive an email notification for calendar events? Next question. For example, maintenance notification. Absolutely. So if you go into, again, this is something that needs to be configured by you, but we're certainly there to help you with that, and there's some different articles on this too, on notifications. But if you go into the configuration of your account and you're looking at, let's say, we'll take your example, the maintenance notification. If you were to go into your asset records, you would have a date called next scheduled maintenance or something similar, right? In the configuration tool, if you go to your assets group and edit that, you'll be able to find that date field as one of your fields called next scheduled maintenance. Alongside of that field, there will be a section called notifications. This is where you would be able to click add and add new notification and essentially configure a notification that can go to whomever you deem necessary. And you can make it, you can, for example, say, send me a notification 5, 7, 10 days before the scheduled maintenance is due. And that notification section on that field level in the configuration is how you would go in and configure that. We can also reach out with additional documentation on that and obviously help you set those up too. If you reach out to our support team, they'll be happy to give you some guidance in that regard as well. It's definitely something that's doable. Awesome. Someone asked when the reservation update will come out. I don't know if I'm going to get my hands slapped. I'm not allowed to say too much, but just for solidifying that release and the development of that and preparing for it. But it is scheduled to come out within the next few months, and more to come on that. We'll definitely make sure that we are that we're able to communicate out all of its features. We'll do another webinar. We're actually going to do 2 webinars on that one as well. One for an admin, one for end users, to ensure that everyone knows how to use it, and kind of the views and the options are a little bit different from role-based, between the 2 different roles. So be on the lookout for information coming soon in that regard, and we'll make sure to share that ASAP. All right, let's take another question. I'm unable to see the same calendar as displayed. Yeah, so thank you for that comment. This feature is going live at the end of this month, and it will be available to you as long as you are in the new UI, so that you can see the same thing that I demonstrated today. So this is kind of a heads up. Want to get some walkthrough going on, make sure that you're familiar and understand how to navigate that, and that you can prepare your teams accordingly for these changes that are coming. But you will be able to see that calendar at the end of this month. Awesome. One other question that came in that I thought was a really great question. Will the data from my old calendar migrate over for me and my users? So as part of the beginning of the webinar, in case you missed this piece, the old calendar and the new calendar are very different in the way that they function and the way that they're configured. And so it's not a one-to-one relationship. We will need to go in and have users set up their views, right? So if I have a checkout calendar, for example, right now, where I can see all of the items that are checked out, and that's kind of my go-to. As an end user, I'll need to go into the new calendar and create a quick calendar view where the checkout dates are one of my date fields that I've selected for my assets group. Great question. You will need to recreate some of those. They're not going to migrate over because it's not a one-to-one relationship from the configuration perspective. Awesome. Everyone, thank you so much for joining. I hope that this was helpful. We had a lot of wonderful questions here. Please be sure to answer that survey that was on the control panel of the webinar. We really appreciate your feedback, all of it. So don't be shy. Let us know what you think. We really want to hear from you. It's really important. So thanks again. If you did ask a question today and I was not able to address that, we are going back and answering all of these questions, and you'll get an email either from our support or product teams to make sure that you've got the updates. Awesome. Thanks so much. Take care. This will be available on our website as well as in the community portal. To get to the community portal, go to the support portal in your account. I highly encourage you to check that out. Have a wonderful day. We'll talk to you all soon.